Welcome back. So second half of the week. Last time I told you I was going to be doing some cables to actuate those doors for the nose gear, and sort of had a change of plan here. I've decided to go with push rods, sort of like those ones that I was working on for the main gear door. So here I am up at Brits and just taking down the end of a 1/4 inch rod, or a couple of bits of 1/4 inch rod, and ultimately just putting a thread on there so I can put some rod ends on there and use those to actuate the doors. So here's the doors, and I've got Devin to put these little tabs on there with a hole in there that I made, and he's just bonded them on with high sol, and so that gives me a good place to mount these the rod ends to without sort of compromising the strength of the hinge arm itself. And I had Brit weld on this cross brace there. That's gonna connect the other ends of the rods to there, and there's the two rods there, so already threaded with the rod ends on there, and it just has to be all assembled now. And while that's all going on, I had the guys show up to do the AC for us to charge that, and I noticed, as you can see here, the serpentine belt had like come off, and I don't know when that happened. I guess it happened at the last run. And also too, what I think happened was coolant comes out of this little gap there, because the Audis, they don't care that coolant comes out and just runs, down whatever. I put a little valve thing on there so it could drain out, straight to the ground, but it actually comes out the top. And I have a feeling when it was overflowing there the other day, it sort of came out that little gap there and sort of splashing on various parts of the top of the engine. I think some got on the belt, and the belt ultimately basically threw itself off the pulleys. And I've subsequently discovered that I'm pretty sure the belt was too short as well, and so I've actually changed it up, and you'll see here in a little bit, changed it up to a longer belt, and I'm actually going to try one the next step longer, even on top of that. So I had to pull out a little bit of stuff there, the governor and stuff, to get to that, to be able to put the belt back on. And as I said, there it is there. I've got the little idler arm there in the position there where you can slide the belt on. So you put the little bolt thing in there, and you crank on that, and it sort of tensions the spring, and that little bolt that's through there, that guy there, that holds it in place while you put the belt on, and then you just basically crank on that little bolt to get that little opening again then after you got the belt on. And you can see how much effort I'm taking to get that on. It should just basically slide on. So in fact, that's why I say the belt was a bit too short, and so the longer belt has helped, because what was happening was, when it starts running there, that belt actually wants to walk across that pulley there, and it actually sticks out about maybe more than 1/8 of an inch, which is way too much. So anyway, back on the nose gear door, see I got those rod ends bolted in there now, and so the next thing I have to do is get the rod sorted out and mount it up there. You can see that's how that all sort of works, so getting it all into place there. Meanwhile, Jeff and Devin are still pushing on with getting the wings done, and as you can see there, the winglets now have had what's pretty much their first round of primer since they came out of the molds, and Jeff's sort of doing a little bit of body work and marking out the places that need extra bits of fill and stuff. So it's kind of disappointing really that you've got these parts come out of the mold and then still need to do all this work on them. It's like, not really that happy with how all that, the extra work that has to be done on all that stuff. Anyway, so I got my linkages hooked up, and just pushing down and putting that one main gear down makes the nose gear go up when I've got the sort of gear in the halfway down position. And as you can see, it's working super nice, and just like in the CAD. So I'm pretty happy about that, and I don't even have a spring on there now holding the doors open. They're just basically staying open by gravity, but I will have a spring on there, and you can see how nice those doors ended up fitting in the end. Super nice flush fit, and this is what it looks like looking straight down off that nose hatch door. bit of a weird angle there in the camera, but you can see how that wheel sort of disengages there against the tire, and likewise when it comes up, the little wheel hits the tire and then it pulls the door shut. So pretty simple. And moving on there, guys, now Jeff's got the intake scoop there, all with its final round of primer on there, including the underneath on the inside lip there. So that's another part that's done, and still got to do some cowling as well as these the winglets there. And you can see he's got all the fill on there and some guide coat there where it needs to be sanded. And here I'm taking that belt off again. Actually, no, put it back on again. So this is the new belt now. This is Friday morning. I got the slightly longer belt on there, and it's sitting better, and when I rotate the engine or when I turn the engine, it sits better on that pulley. But you can see it's slightly off the wheel there a little bit, less than half of what it was doing before. So I am going to get a longer belt because I really want that to sit nicely, and I think if the belt's too short, it wants to just pull off that pulley, and ultimately it could throw itself off, which I think is what happened there the other day. Okay, so now I got the longer belt on. I also had the air conditioning system charged, and I did a little bit of work on making sure that the ECU and everything and the wiring was all working to trigger the air conditioning system. So this afternoon the test was going to be to test the engine again to make sure it wasn't overheating and the coolant wasn't overflowing, and also test the air conditioning system, and just another little taxi test. So here I am getting ready to start it up, and I know, look at all the dust on that top of that glare shield. It's crazy. And you can see there I got a camera there mounted there by where the pulleys are, so I could actually see it, and I actually had the iPad set up with a live monitor there, so I could watch and see if that belt threw off while I was doing my testing, which was kind of pretty neat to have that and watch in real time. That was exactly the picture I could see right there on the iPad. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so the belt didn't fly off, or didn't come off at all, and I didn't have any problems with the cooling or anything, but this was just an initial run up here. I just wanted to get the engine a little bit warm, and then see if I could bleed any more air out of the whole cooling system. So right now all I'm doing here is just warming it up a little bit and just checking everything, just monitoring the temperatures, looking at that belt to see if it came off or not. And actually this evening on the way home I picked up the slightly longer belt, so I'll try that one next week and just see how well that fits, because the last thing that you want to have is a belt come off while you're flying. That would be bad. But all these things, and this is what the testing's for, it's one thing triggers the other. So the coolant coming out of the radiator there actually kind of, I think, triggered that belt to come off, and hadn't that happened, that belt may never have come off. We would have always had probably a belt that was too short. So this is now after I've warmed it up a little bit, and you can see this is getting a little bit of air out of the top of the radiator. There wasn't very much in there at all, as you'll see. So, but it's nice to drain it, bleed all the air out of there. And I never did this when it was on the test stand. So I think I'm getting myself in a position where the cooling is going to be better than ever on this whole setup. And there you can see now I've got all the air out of it. So that little setup works great doing that. And meanwhile, Jeff's doing fill there, and Devin was mixing the filler, and he was having to do it really quickly because of how hot it was today. The stuff goes off within a matter of minutes. So anyway, they're getting those done, and it won't be long, and those whole wings will get more spraying. So getting closer to the end of the day here. I wanted to do my little taxi test out and do a run up and see how well the air conditioning was working, and also just test and just see if I was going to have any problems with the coolant, and also put like a little drink bottle there underneath the coolant overflow to catch any coolant that came out of there, and I sealed up that opening at the top of the reservoir there so it couldn't sort of leak out either side. And yeah, just basically did this run up. So started great. This thing starts first shot, it's really cool. And you see I've put a couple of bits of yellow tape there on the fan there that pulls air through the air conditioning condenser, and just so I know when those fans turn on. And I've got an indication on the ECU when it turns on the air conditioning system, because there's a bunch of criteria that have to be met. You have to turn on the AC on the control panel itself, and then there has to be enough pressure in the system before it will click on. And also, what's the other thing? So that's the trinary switch that looks to make sure there's enough pressure and it's not too hot or too cold or something like that before it'll flick on. And then the ECU will actually go and turn on the compressor. And actually, if anybody really knows, I've just got the compressor itself just wired to 12 volts. So there's two wires going into it. One's a red and the other one's a white. I'm assuming that the red is the one that takes 12 volts, and I think it was a white or a black. I think it was a white. I'm assuming that one was the ground. And so the ECU, what it's doing right now when it's time to turn the AC compressor on, it basically just powers 12 volts to that red wire. And it's putting quite a load on the engine when I do that, and have to keep the RPMs up at idle, otherwise it'll sort of stall the engine. So I'm not sure if it's working all that well. I'm going to get the air conditioning guy out again and have him check the pressures, and probably have to put a bit more of a charge in the system, because it seemed like it was running cool. And you'll see here when I get over the other side of the airport and I do my run up, one of the things I did do was check to see how well the AC was working. And you can kind of feel a bit cooler air, but not having the cabin closed or anything like that, it's just pulling the hot air from the cabin. And it was 90 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so not exactly a cool day, but I did notice that the air was a little bit cooler. Anyway, so I'll have the guys come out and check the system again. But once I put the doors on here next week, I've absolutely got to have the air conditioning working, otherwise I'm going to bake in there on these hot days, because with no real fresh air fan from outside, it'd just be unbearable in there. So it's super nice with the doors off right now, when you're just taxiing around, it's not bad at all. So yeah, I'm getting used to taxiing, and in this aircraft, the steering it doesn't take too long to get a handle of the differential braking on this one. And yeah, everything ran really well. It's time now that I've got I'm not sure when that belt came off. I have a feeling it came off when I was doing the power run there on the last run, and then as I was taxiing back, I didn't have the water pump running, which would be bad, but I was monitoring the temperatures, and if it was going to get too hot there for any given reason, I would have just shut it down and we would have come back and towed the aircraft back to the hangar. But it never got over 250 degrees Fahrenheit, the engine, so I'm not worried about it. And now that that's all fixed, and I've got all the air bled out of the cooling system, you'll see in a little bit where the temperatures were, and I'll show you the ECU output on this. But yeah, it's much cooler. In fact, I think I can get a little bit more power out of the engine now, because it didn't seem to be working that hard now that it's running cooler, even though it was 90 something degrees out. And there you can see in the background there was a CAP crew there in a Cessna that were getting ready to depart, and they were waving at me as I went by. They're probably like, what the hell is that thing? I'm sure they'd never seen the Raptor before. It's interesting being at the airport there. Quite a few people have been sort of poking around there, ones who have hangars there with their own aircraft. They're coming by and checking out what we're doing and things like that. And so most of them have never heard of this before, so it's interesting to get a little bit of feedback from people there. Anyway, so I'm setting up here, and I'll skip forward here in a second, but this is where I did a bit of a check of the air conditioning system to see how that was working. and then did was just monitoring the temperatures and everything just to see how everything was setting up, and then I did my run up here, which I'll let you watch. And while I'm getting ready for that, I'll let you know that I have contacted a DAR, and I've got this guy who's going to come and check out what we're doing in the first week of June, so that's only a week away, just over a week away. And it looks like our test pilot Len is probably going to come out and just take a first look see around about June 9th or something like that, and hopefully we can get him back and we'll be ready before the end of June to do the first flight if everything goes smoothly. So it's exciting. And Mark's working on finishing off this redesign for this oil shuttle for the redrive, and I think we're going to just pull the trigger and get that done. So anyway, I'll let you watch this little run up, and then we'll show you what that looked like on the ECU. Okay, so not a super long run. I only ran it up for about a minute, and it took it up to about 3,200 RPM. I didn't want to push it quite as hard as I've been pushing it because I wanted to check the temperatures and everything like that. But actually, it turned out really well. So it wasn't getting hot at all. In fact, the EGTs you'll see here in a minute only got just over 1,100. So I got actually quite a lot of room. So even though I've gone and adjusted the prop there the last time and added some more pitch to it, I think I've actually got room for more now that the cooling is sorted out and I've got all the air out of the radiator. And actually after I did this run and when I taxied back, I went and bled just a little bit more air out of the radiator. Not much at all, so and I'll do it probably once or twice more just to make sure until I don't get any more air showing up. So pretty happy with how things are working out on that, and let me show you how this run looked like on the ECU. So there's the total of me sort of taxiing around and all that sort of stuff, and in the middle there, that's where the power run sort of begins there. And you can see if I zoom in on that area, let's see what it looks like. And the temperatures overall, everything was much cooler than it was before, and so obviously for good reason, being that there's plenty of coolant in the system and no air in there, and as I said, I'm not sure when that belt threw itself off, but it's interesting that belt never threw itself off for the 20-something hours that I have running that thing on the test stand. Even like 2.5 hours straight at 2800 RPM, it never threw off. And I'm pretty sure when the coolant got on there, because that's very slippery, I think that was half the problem. It was too tight, and the slippery coolant on one of those pulleys, and that just made it come off. But anyway, with a looser belt now, which I think is a better fit, I don't think we're going to have that issue anymore of that coming off. But anyway, all the numbers looked really good on there. You can sort of pause if you want and look through that. This is what it looks like, when you're looking at the gauges there while it's running. So you can see there the EGTs aren't too high. The boost level is only 34 psi, so there's still room there. Overall, pretty happy with how that's coming out. So next time I'll run it, and there you can see this is where I have a new little screen that I put together for the air conditioning, and that's that little section there where the air conditioning was on. And as I said, I think the air was a little bit cooler there, but I need to get the guys out to check the pressures in the system and probably make sure it's fully charged and working correctly. But it will be nice to have the air conditioning, when it's 90 degrees out. It's supposed to get up to 94 or something like that over the weekend. And we do have, Memorial Day weekend here, so Monday is a public holiday. So I don't think, I know we're not working, and then I'll obviously be doing something, because I got plenty of things to do, little projects and stuff that need to happen or whatever. And I started, working on the test program and things like that, and getting things ready for the registration of the aircraft, and getting things ready for the DAR. So yeah, a bunch of things all going on. It's quite busy right now, but we're getting there. Still, goal is to try and make Oshkosh if we can, but that means we have to get the airworthiness certificate, and we have to get the test flights done and the first 40 hours flown off, and then a little bit of breathing room all around there in order to make sure that it's ready to fly up to Oshkosh. But hopefully, if all goes well, that will happen. Anyway, that is our update for this week. Thanks again for tuning in, and join us again on I think it'll be Wednesday actually with the next update. Join us again on Wednesday, and see what we're up to. And thanks again for watching.